wasn't seeing it. I just kept pouring more and more into this wrong thing. And he just said, yo, I gotta save you, brother. I gotta just take it all away and have you fall face first so that you can get up and see the actual thing you're supposed to be doing.
The thing with that is, and it's a great, that's a great story, because again, somebody needs to hear that story so that they don't have to go through that. But we live in a world where, I'm playing devil's advocate, although I agree with you, where we live in the information age. And so many people, which I've had this debate recently with a family member about, you know, you want to do all these different things. And I love that. But as a podcaster myself who's then ventured into other things, it wouldn't have made sense for me to get into vlogging at the same time while I'm trying to master podcasting. Right now, I done podcasting so long, now I can do the vlogging too. Because it's like you already got to here, you didn't have several seasons before your first vlog. So I was trying to explain to them, well, and my homegirl, great example, who when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you see acceleration. What's up, y'all? So, look, let me just go ahead and keep it short with you. Did you know that as of 2024, the United States has a literacy problem? 21% of adults cannot read, and 54% of them have been recorded, and it has been documented, read below a 6th grade level. That is a catastrophe. But that's where I step in. Now, I'm not going to teach the grown folks how to read and write. However, PSA, the Ghostwriting Solution, has now a new package. It's called the Literacy Liftoff, and it caters to 9th through 12th graders who struggle with reading, writing, and comprehension. This new tutoring service will offer vocabulary skills, teaching students how to literally write from the bottom, literally teaching them how to do an introduction paragraph, how to do a hook, how to do a conclusion, how to add a little razzle dazzle, and how to add their own personal touch to it. Okay. Now, you know what you're saying. Well, Izzy, that's what they go to school for. Absolutely. But as an ex-teacher, the teachers just don't have time. So this program has 3 different packages from 3 different sets of hours that you can take. So if you're an AP, a principal, the student who needs help, the parent of the student, or you just know somebody who needs the help. If you're in the Houston area, you can get in-person tutorials. But if you are not in Houston, there are also virtual options offered as well. So hit me up at my email, theprodigyperspective@gmail.com, and or psathepodcast.com, and we will hook you up. It's a great day to be alive. It's a great day to see y'all again on another PSA the Mental Health Podcast episode. Again, y'all, we are going through with the season 9, and I'm excited about season 9 because we built the momentum up for it, and now we're here. It was something else I was going to tell y'all. Make sure that when you say you're going to do something, do it. And that's a message to myself. Now, let me tell you something. I ain't no lousy person. Say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, and I usually do it. But I will, if I say I'll see or we'll see, just go ahead and just assume I'm not going to do it. But I do be surprising y'all and myself sometimes when I say we'll see and then I actually do it. So, yeah. But if I say we'll see, might as well hang it up. All right, y'all. So I have a great episode today. One that I feel like sometimes gets overlooked. One that I feel like as a man, we're supposed to be doing. But I think sometimes as men, we get caught up, we get lost in the sauce. I'm going to leave it like that. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But let me get into this week's meme. So the meme reads, you asked God to bless it, but he didn't even assign it. Think about that. Think about that. Inspiration for this episode. Now, y'all know my inspirations be all over the place, but I'm going to tie it in later. So one of my inspirations for this episode was Love Don't Cost a Thing. How does that movie, not that song, but how does that movie inspire that? So I think about, remember Christina Milian's character? I can't remember her name, but I remember she was building up when she built the bay basically with Nick Cannon. I would think his name was Alan. She turned him to Al. I don't know, it was just something about that scene or just that whole part of the movie where she was literally she created him from scratch like Frankenstein almost. And she created the perfect person that she wanted. But I'm gonna get more into that later. Solomon in the Bible, he was a builder. I've actually been reading through First Kings and just seeing how much he was building literally temples from scratch. Now, I'm not building no temple, but just because you're not building necessarily building doesn't mean you're not called to build. We'll get more into that as the episode goes along as well. The show, you know, it's a little cliche, but you remember they redid him though. Bob the Builder, remember that? Remember the show back in the day? Well, they rebuilt him. He looks totally different now, but you know, he built some every episode. And you know, what was I going to say about him? He stayed on at work. He never took a break. And although that was a cartoon, and although it's a kid's show, keep that in mind. He was always in the bag. Like, I don't think people get it. Like, that man stayed constructing something from the bottom every episode. But he did have a team too, and that's something we're gonna get into too. And also, First Kings 8:18, it says, "But the Lord said to me, Father David, you did well to have it in your heart to build a temple for my name." And more about that verse is, he built something, and it was great that you built it, but that's not what you're supposed to be doing right now. Keep that in mind as well. All right, let's get into happy hour. So for today's happy hour, I got a quick rant I want to go on about one of the worst things that we can hear is the phrase, be a man. Now, it's needed in some cases, but I think, you know how they say right message, wrong person? I think that that's a big thing, especially when sometimes when women will tell men to be a man, right? And sometimes, and most times, it's used out of frustration. Well, yeah, you need to just be a man. My issue with that statement, especially from the people we hear from, especially on social media, is, although in some instances it might be true, when you hear that phrase from certain people, I have to ask this, and this is not me being mean, this is honesty. Who taught you how to be a man for you to say you need to be a man? A lot of times when women throw those phrases out there out of frustration, a lot of times them women grew up fatherless. I have to wonder, when we speak on certain things when it comes to what men should do, I have to ask, where did you learn that from? Because if you didn't have it in the household, how do you know how to do it? That's just a question I want to pose, and that's something I'm definitely going to clip out. We tired of the gender wars. We tired of the debates back and forth. Men should do this, women should do this. And this is the thing with that. One, we all know it's unproductive. Two, a lot of the times y'all just be saying stuff for clickbait. Trust me, I know. I literally know somebody who panders to women and what women should do, and literally says, say it openly, I don't believe none of that stuff. They just built an audience on just for clout. But the point that I'm making is here, that phrase, be a man, is the most unhelpful advice because it's typically used in instances of frustration and anger. Again, there are instances where, as a man, you need to be a man, right? But saying it and not showing it is it's two different things. You can say it all day. How you gonna show how to be done? If you're a father, which I think if you're a boy and you had a father in your life and he said that in an instance, even if he said it in frustration, he gonna backdoor and show you what to do, right? I'm just against advice without a follow-up. So in this episode, or not this episode, but in this moment, I just really want to really get on that phrase. I really want to unpack it more. And I really think that we need to just have a discourse about it. How did it start? Where did it come from? Are we using it at the proper times? That's something I want to ask. And hopefully that little rant, that quick little rant, get the conversation going. And it might even spur up a whole episode. I don't know yet. We're going to see. But enough of me ranting today. I have a good guest today, somebody who I've watched from afar build literally podcasts and networks, who has their own podcast. I think those are, to me, not deep. Yeah, I'm gonna say they're best people because a person who builds other podcasts but also has their own, I think they really love the art of it and they're always going to get the best out of it. And if they're working with people, I believe that they're going to know how to bring the best out of them. So this is somebody who has a great podcast, who is doing a lot of good things, who's produced over 500 episodes. We're gonna get into that as well. But let me go ahead and introduce him and let's get started. My guy, what is going on?
Hey, what's going on, Izzy? How you doing, brother?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for coming on today. Now,
Really?
YouTube can see you. My audio people can't. So can you tell the people what's your name, where you from, and where do you live now?
Yes, sir. So my name is Quiy Saunders. My stage name, I guess you could call it, is Quiy Speaks. Quiy Speaks on all platforms: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, my website as well. But my name is Quiy Saunders. I'm a producer, creative director, storyteller, brand strategist. But I'm just, like you said, really passionate about, the art of, I wouldn't say podcasting, but the art of storytelling, right? And it
Yeah,
just so happens that podcasting is a vehicle for us to tell stories. And when you learn what your story is, as I'm sure we'll unpack in this episode, Izzy, is like, it's so much power behind knowing your story and unpacking your story to others and crafting it in a way that resonates, builds community, and builds trust amongst all the people who really resonate with your story. And just learning these over the past 7 years or so, it's just, I see the results, and it's nothing more. It's nothing that brings me pleasure more outside of my family, of course, and helping people tell their story.
definitely. I like that when you said it's not necessarily with podcasts, and although you like doing that, you just like building stories all around. You know what I mean? That's not limited to a podcast, a movie, a vlog, a TV show. It's just like all over, and that's good because I think when people have that. And I had Dr. Melanie, who was on my podcast 2 seasons ago. She's a therapist, but she also used to be a reality show producer for
Mm.
like Real World, Bad Girls Club, all those shows back in the day. And that was her main thing, which she even said a lot of times shows today have lost, is trying to tell a story. And I think when you really master that, I think you can get anything, because you can turn any situation, any scenario, any group. There's a story there if you know how to produce it. And even she said a lot of times, if you cast the show right, and that's not just reality, that's scripted, that's podcasting. If you cast the show right, you really don't have to do much. You really just have to follow it. You put the right questions out there, and then the right people that's gonna get the debate going. You know how to do it. So good stuff. All right. So how did you get into building podcasts?
It's so interesting. It's like the long story short, pretty much. I started with my podcast. Obviously, you have to have some type of ground and
Yeah.
foundation. So I started with my own podcast, The $1 Million Mind, and I was audio only, And originally,
Right.
I started the podcast to do like a book review. I'm a self-published author.
Okay.
From 2017, 2018, and I wanted to start a podcast to dive a little bit deeper into the things that I was trying to convey in my book. And that was what the goal was for about the first 6 months of me launching. Like, the whole plan was to launch to do that. And then I started opening the conversation to guests. And when I did that, the podcast really started to take on a life of its own and move in the direction that it wanted to go, which I encourage for anybody who's trying to start a platform. Is like, yes, as parents, this is also Jen for parenthood. Like, as parents, we want the best for our child and our children. And we have these ideas that we want them to, things that we want them to accomplish, but you have to just give them the foundation and the freedom to figure this stuff out on their own and move in the direction that they want to go off of the guidance and the core values that you've instilled in them. And so that's kind of what I did with my podcast. I just instilled core values in the direction that I wanted to go, and I allowed it to move in the direction it needed to go based off of the guests. And then we started having more guests, and we started having more entrepreneurs, coaching conversations. And I moved into video after taking on my first podcast client. I started working with a group of guys who started a platform called Hardly Initiated. They wanted to go straight video, and I said, "Hey, I'm here for it, because now I can use you guys as like test subjects for when I want to move my platform to video. And it worked out tremendously, to say the least. But that's like the long story short.
Right. Yeah. So I like that story because even the podcast that you work on, your podcast has substance, and we're gonna get more into that in a second. But what does it mean to you to work on projects and work with building creative projects, whatever, that have substance in a world where now substance-less content is pushed most?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that it's more fulfilling, right?
Yeah.
It's easy for, like, you ever had a job where you show up there and it's just more so an ATM, you're there to collect your paycheck, but the work doesn't fulfill you. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's hard for you to get out of bed to go to work, like, damn, it's already Sunday, I got to go to work tomorrow. Like, that's
Yeah.
the feeling you get when you work on projects that don't fulfill you. And so when I work on projects and podcasts, documentaries that have a mission, that have a purpose, that have core values that align with mine, it's easier for me to have that fulfillment when I'm working to, like, help you achieve what you're trying to achieve, because I could see I see the vision, I see the purpose, I see the impact you're trying to make. So it's not, I don't have those feelings of, dang, I got to go work on this studio. I got to go to the studio and spend 8 hours recording with this client. I don't have those feelings. It's all fulfillment because I believe in the core values. I believe in the mission. I'm excited about the direction they're trying to take it. I believe in the impact that they're trying to make. And so that's the answer to that question. It's just the level of fulfillment that I get. And recently I have started being more selective on who I work with. I look at things like, what is the content that you're trying to put out there? Is it constructive? Is it destructive? Right? I'm not really necessarily trying to work with, and I don't have to now, to work with people that are, more destructive in as far as their content.
Yeah.
And organization, like, are you organized? Are you willing to even commit to this thing? Like, because I don't want to work with you if you say you want to do X, but then the level of commitment you're willing to put in shows that you're not really ready to do X. And then I'm more so working on your brand harder than you are. So those are some things that, like, some red flags that I look for to make sure that I could vet out now clients that I work with.
Okay. Good stuff. I like that because you could easily, and I mean easily, because trust me, I know it. You could easily have get a podcast. Y'all seen what Beyonce just said? Kanye West crashing out again. We could easily do those things.
Right.
And one thing what I appreciate about your content, I'm a backdoor to me, is your main goal is to have these conversations where sometimes, let's keep it 100, everything isn't necessarily therapy, right? But some people cannot afford to get these gems. It's because there are a lot of free gems on podcasts, a lot of free gems in books. And don't get it twisted, is the market oversaturated? Yes, even though in our case we've been doing it before it became oversaturated, so technically we can say, well, I was here before the wave. But I think that sometimes people overlook, like, you literally could have got this information for free, and just by listening, there are platforms and podcasts that provide free information. And I think that if people actually really just listen to some of them for real, instead of just getting caught up in, oh, it's so many, I don't want to hear another podcast, then cool. I heard some people say, like, they don't like just listening to people talk. I mean, hey, that's fine. I guess you have your opinion, but I think you should try it. It could be one that you might like. How does it feel being that podcast that is that one for somebody?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great feeling when you have people reach out to you, of course, and say, like, "Hey, I saw this episode and, like, I appreciate it." It's an even better feeling knowing that I'm putting out content that my family enjoys listening to, right? And, like, they're like, "Yo, I didn't know that about trust, or I didn't know that about, establishing a business, or I'm glad that you brought this person on because they gave me more insight, as that's something that I'm working on." So it's a great feeling when you have people resonate with your content and tell you, like, "Hey, I really enjoy it." But one thing I want to touch on that you said, Izzy, too, was elaborate on that word saturation. Because yes, it is a very real thing. Saturation does exist in every market, but I think we need to redefine what it means, because some people use that as a crutch to not get into a market,
Yeah.
especially if that's their purpose, right? So I don't want the person who says, I really wanted to start a podcast, but I keep hearing it's saturated, so I don't think I should do it. No, you should still do it, but understand that this is what saturation means. It just means that there are a lot of people who do it. There's a small percentage of people who do it really well and have learned how to make it their lifestyle, their career. They have monetized it. And there's a larger percentage of people who do it and they do it lazily, and then they scream it doesn't work, or everybody's trying to do it. Like, so you just have to be that person that come into it and outwork the 99% of people who are not doing the work to make it what they want to make it. And that's all it is. Like, is every market has the potential to be a career for somebody. And I'm
Yeah,
blessed to have been able to make, you know, podcasting, content creation, storytelling my career for the long haul, because I just identified what I need to do to outwork the other people that are also trying to do this thing.
absolutely. Good stuff. All right. Now, before we go to the next segment, I have a few words. I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind, and there's no right or wrong answer. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The first one is build,
Build, outworking everybody else.
produce,
Produce, it means to be organized.
network.
Network, it means to be uncomfortable.
Okay. All right. The definition of build: construct something by putting parts or materials together, produce to make something or bring something into existence, and then network: a group of or system of interconnected people or things. All right. So good stuff. All right. Now let's move to the next segment, which is, what does this have to do with mental health? So again, every episode I have to ask that because I know some people may get lost in the sauce, but we're gonna always break it down. Now, with your podcast, obviously it's been doing good. It's been, reaching the people you want to reach, all that good stuff, right? So, without revealing too much, because I do believe there are things we should keep to ourselves, what is maybe 2 to 3 goals you would like to have for your podcast in the year 2025?
Man, one thing that we're consistently working on is expanding the network. So we're always looking for new ideas for shows that we can bring to our audience. And sometimes it doesn't look like another show of me, or another show of me and my co-host. It looks like now bringing on the other shows. So we produce a lot of podcasts. So as we're doing this, we're vetting out what are those things that we're looking for in another podcast to bring onto our network and to start building more like a network, because that's what it is. So that would be one goal. I would say another goal that we are doing is being more strategic and more intentional on using our podcast to fulfill our offers. So we have a branding agency from low ticket to high ticket offerings and packages, who now we just want to make sure that the podcast serves as a marketing funnel to the branding agency, to the actual business. And so
Yeah.
that's, now where we are in the season of, just being intentional and to continue to offer value to not just our audience, but to our guests and to our clients as well.
Okay. I like that. What was I about to say? I really like that because it's always like, how can we do better? Every layer is like, how can we do better? How can we keep doing better? So obviously, I can't ask you, do you enjoy what you do? Because you've already stated that you do. And I know a lot of times, men especially, we get in these jobs. And in some cases, a lot of men too, just how we're taught, like we will be the best at the job. We don't necessarily like it, but it's just like we here anyway. Might as well, be the best, do the best, all that good stuff. Now, we know the definition of mental health, that especially we go off this podcast, is the study of how we act, think, and feel. So if we're getting into how we act, think, and feel, what inspired you or pushed you to be so motivated, so driven, to be so, just able to move how you move? Because a lot of men cannot do that, especially at your age. Because how old are you, right? You 30, right?
Yeah, I just turned 30 in March this month. Yeah.
Okay. Happy birthday. So you know what I'm saying? At 30, a lot of men still ain't there yet. So how do you do it?
I'm intentional. I think that's a
Okay.
lot of times what we miss. And we can say that we're intentional, but our actions don't show we're intentional. And the first action that you take towards intention is you write things down, right? And because writing things down, like, physically does something
Mhm.
to us. Spiritually, it does something to us. It more so, it makes us now align with the things that we're writing down. It's the reason why our teachers wanted to write things down, because it increased the likelihood of us remembering the information, right? So if you just say, oh, I want to start a podcast, a lot of people say, I want to do this, I want to do that, but then they don't write it down. They don't align themselves with the people who have done it. They don't have conversations with people who have failed and then relearn something and rebuild and do like they don't do anything besides just talk about it. And then a lot of times we talking about it to the wrong people. And I want to go back to what you said earlier, Izzy, with like right message, wrong person. That goes both ways. I think what you were saying, like right message from the wrong person, but sometimes you can have the right message and you're delivering it to the wrong person.
That
And a
too.
lot of times, podcasters, we do that too, where we say, oh, I want to start a podcast where it talks about everything and I want to reach everyone. That's the wrong person. You need to be intentional on who exactly are you trying to impact? Who exactly are you trying to get this message to? Because that's how it falls on deaf ears when you're trying to say a message that is very specific to a large group of people. Everybody's not going to resonate with it. And so when you don't have that resonation, that's how you also miss out on the virality of your content. That's how a lot of people just don't resonate and they're not sharing because you frame the message in this vagueness because you're trying to blanket it for everyone when you need to speak it very exact, very matter of fact, very definite to a specific person. And that's how people like, yo, I saw that video you put out, Izzy, and it seemed like you was talking directly to me. Well, that's
Mhm.
because I was, right?
Yeah.
I knew that you was going to react this way because you were the person that I wanted to reach when I created the video. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of like my answer in a nutshell.
Like I said, it's good stuff. And I remember even I was at I think a church picnic, and one of the older ladies, well, she ain't that old, but she was just like, and I told her about my podcast. She knew about it. She was like, so it's only caters to men. I was like, yeah, young millennial men. And she was like, kind of what most people think. Like, she was like, well, wouldn't you want it to reach everybody? I said, well, you have to, in content creating, you have to niche it down. There are very few people. I'm not the numbers person. I'm a writer. I'm not the numbers person. But I might even say it's the 2% of people who can make content that's for everybody and it pop. Like in most cases, those people already had a following. They were already, they just shifted it over to content creation, but they was probably already famous. That's why a lot of these famous people can't create them podcasts where they just interviewing their friends and they get thousands of dollars and endorsement deals because they already had a name. So I think too, with that, and I was explaining to my friend last night because she wanted to bring her podcast back. I'm like, you got the blueprint right here. I said you could do the cheat code, which is what I did, and you could be your own target audience and really niche down and narrow down who you trying to reach. And it's gonna be people. It's always somebody like you. They'll so giving her stuff away. She wanted to talk about women who going through funks in life. I said, okay, cool. You can niche down a little more, but that right there, it's a lot of women going through something. You know what I mean? You could, so you could be that voice for that. And that's the thing. Teaching people how to be that voice for whatever it is that they're trying to get over, whatever it is they're trying to succeed in, whatever. There's always, you could be that person.
Exactly.
Now, let's get into building because we talked about it a little bit, but building activities. So engaging in building activities, constructing models, creating things just in general. This offers numerous mental health benefits. Here are 4 ways these activities contribute to psychological well-being. And this first one comes from Real Simple in the article Nostalgic Hobbies You Never Too Old to Try. It says enhancing cognitive function and creativity. Revisiting creativities like art and writing can stimulate the brain, enhancing cognitive functions and promoting mental agility. This is especially the case when it comes to building things, especially things like content creation. The second one says promoting social connection and teamwork. According to Indeed, in the article 17 benefits of team building for your organization, participating in team building activities fosters social connections, enhances communication skills, and builds trust amongst individuals. The third one says provide a sense of purpose and accomplishment. According to Very Well Mind, the article 6 types of hobbies you can pick up and maintain as an adult. Engaging in building, creating things from scratch, other hobbies and content creation can provide individuals with a sense of purpose, accomplishment, which is vital for mental well-being. This is one thing that I like that you said before I go to the last one. You said something about, I like the fact that I don't feel like I have to work. Like you're working, but it doesn't feel like work. Now, I feel the same way as a full-time podcaster and ghostwriter. If you need a book, ebook, hit me up. But a lot of times, men don't know how to go about that. Do you believe that is one? We know it's a fear, but do you believe that people are afraid to take their risk and bet on themselves? And were you able to do that so easily?
Yeah, people are definitely afraid of risk. I mean, I think just as a society, we have made people fear risk. Everything is about fear, right? And so when you have platforms like the news and even platforms
Mhm.
like social media, and you have, the way that the education system is set up with schooling, we're a very risk adverse society where we're just conditioned to go with the safe route, right? Especially our parents and their generation. To some of us, were coddled and haven't experienced our parents, take risks. So now we definitely have no idea how to even walk into a risky situation and
Mhm.
how to not ball up and how to open up, be more aware. The fact that I even see kids walking in parking lots with their heads in their phone shows that we have this this like embedded into us that everything is like we're already safe and that we don't know how to analyze risk. For me, that is like rule number one, is like you should never be walking anywhere to where you can't analyze and assess risk and then know how to adapt. And
Yeah.
so I just feel like my parents did a good job wiring me for understanding that risk is everywhere and that you need to be ready to combat risk. Whether that's in business, I may not have had the best, they may not have had the framework for how to, take on risk in business. But I do think fundamentally I have that framework. And then I just had to go seek the people who knew how to take risk in business, knew how to take risk in finance and how to combat that and how to just be smart. But you, at the end of the day, whether you are risk adverse or not, everyone has a threshold. And so we need to identify how much risk are we willing to take on. And if that's like less than, 10%, you need to do some inner work, to figure out, okay, well, what is it that I'm really trying to accomplish? Because if I'm trying to accomplish being, hitting $30 million by age 40, you're not going to get that done by taking only 10% risk. You're going to have to take big risks, because where there are big risks, there are big rewards. But if you take small risk, there's very small rewards for that. You may find yourself getting a good job, but if that's not what you're looking for, then you need to take a bigger risk. Sometimes it looks like, you know, going jobless. I don't advise that for everybody. Sometimes that
Yeah.
works out for a very small percentage of people. That wouldn't work out for me, right? Because I have a family now that relies on me. So I can't take the risk of, you know, quitting my job off a whim and living out of my car and grinding like people like Tyler Perry did, right? So we just have to identify and be cognizant of being uncomfortable, but also being optimistically realistic.
Okay, the phrases there. See, that's what I like because I'm a wordsmith, so I like when them phrases right there. I'm gonna have to use that one. Now I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna go to the next point. So the fourth one is reduce stress and enhances mood. According to the Sun in the article, people with hobbies like building model railways or collecting figurines are much happier. Individuals who engage in hobbies such as building or collecting have higher levels of happiness and better overall mental health. Now, y'all, hopefully we smart enough to understand those are two examples, but that's just not that. You can do more, right? Okay, you and your job, real quick. Rate the stress level 1 to 10. 10 being the worst, 1 being the lowest. What is your stress level currently in the position that you are in now, living, one of your dreams? I know you got more, but living one of your dreams compared to when you worked a full-time job and was, a job that you felt unfulfilled
Um, I feel like that's a loaded question, right? But I feel like my level of stress right now is about a 7, just because I'm in a always in a building phase, but I'm in a phase of building something new, which takes, we know with building something new, most of the work is building momentum.
at. Right.
And it's a lot. Anytime you have to build new momentum, it's a lot of energy. It's a lot of energy you have to commit to. And I'm raising a 16-month-old son who, has a schedule, has a bedtime, and I'm very intentional with my time. And my wife also keeps me accountable and be intentional with my time, so that I'm not always grinding as much as I would like to, and as much as I like to spend time with my family. I have a certain amount of hours that I can't grind, which means that I have later nights and early mornings. And so that's where a level of my stress comes from. But again, it's all like, to me, all this is worth it. I'm always looking at the end goal, which, to answer your question a few questions ago, which, how do you do it? Like, how do you stay on it? How do you stay motivated? And as I always keep the end in mind, right? A lot of times I think sometimes we think of the activities and how the activities cause stress. That's just the part of that's just come with the territory, because again,
Yeah.
going with risk and going with what you're trying to build, you're not always going to find every little thing that you do fulfilling. But the end goal is what's fulfilling. Like, I don't enjoy when I first started doing podcasts and podcast production, I was editing everybody's videos. Do you think I enjoyed every moment of that? Spending 2, 3, 4 hours editing one person's video when I could be, doing other money earning activities like networking with more creators, or, recording episodes on my own and doing all the other things that I really enjoy. I'm sitting here locked into a studio editing, right? So you're not going to enjoy every part of the process, but you got to keep the end in mind on why this is necessary, and then work as hard as you can to alleviate that stressful activity and put it on someone else who has the talent or more passion. Because there are people who are passionate about editing, and they don't want to be behind camera. They don't want to talk to people. They just want to lock themselves in a basement with vibes and content and just edit. Let me figure
Vibes.
out how to make that the person to as
Yeah.
all my stuff.
No, that's funny. Vibes and content. So now, throughout your journey, you named a few, but what significant obstacles have you encountered in your building career, and how did you navigate them to continue pressing towards your goal? Now, we know keeping the end in mind, but so that's the end goal. But like, what major obstacles, a significant thing, what defining moment? What was that moment that happened where you knew, like, okay, this is a lot, but you know,
Yeah. A couple, like, earlier on, a big thing was just investing into my business, like identifying ways that I needed to invest and not able to invest because of like business funding and credit. And so, like, that's one thing that I want to like urge creators is like, get your credit right, get business funding, and treat this like a business. Don't just say I'm a podcaster. Don't just say, oh, I want to create content. Create it and structure it like a business, because that's the difference of you having 5K months to having 50, 500K months, because you structured it like a business. You get funding for it on the front end. And then when somebody comes along, or when you identify something like hiring an editor, or finding a mentor, or getting that website done so you don't have to spend hours or days trying to do a website when you don't have the skill to do websites in the first place, right? You have the funds and the finances to invest in that stuff so that you can still focus on what's most important, which is creating. And so that would be my advice. And that's what obstacles that I had earlier on was I had to build the slow way, and I had to fail. And even when I did finally get the finances to invest in a coach, I had the obstacles of investing in the wrong coach, which is another
yeah,
thing, like vetting people out, right? You have to identify what KPIs, key performance indicators, are important so that you know how to bring them up to a coach or somebody who's saying, I can help you. Okay, well, if you say you can help me, this is what's important to me. Show me the proof that you've done these things successfully. And earlier on, I did not have that framework for vetting out coaches. Another thing that I struggled with was just my organization. And so since then, I have like a framework for organization and accomplishing goals, which is plan, organize, accountability, and execute. The accountability piece in the middle is crucial, because though I believe we should not share everything with everybody, you can share everything with the right people. Going back to the wrong person, right message.
uh-huh.
On the right person to be your accountability partner, and overshare your goals, overshare your plans, and make sure that when you come up with the plan, you're writing it down, and then you're organizing it in a way that makes it easy for you to execute. Studies show that people who have to-do lists are 80% more likely to cross off every point of that to-do list than people who just say, oh, I need to do XYZ.
Yeah,
Because you're bound to forget some. Also, having a to-do list helps you structure and organize which things come first. And another gem that I want to give you and your audience, Izzy, is like, when you're coming up with to-do lists, when I say organize, meaning make sure you group activities that are similar to each other,
mm,
and make sure that you have time blocked off on your calendar for specific grouped activities as well. For example, if I have tasks like finish the website, record content, record social media, make my bed, right, meal plan, etc. I'm going to group up the content creation task. I'm going to group up the personal development tasks like the meal planning and making my bed, and then I'm going to group up the like the growth task. And I'm going to have three different groups of tasks that I need to do, and I'm going to put them on my calendar in separate blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm trying to do my website and then I'm trying to go right into meal planning, my brain, I'm using two different sides of my brain. And
Yeah.
so the buffer time for me to go to switch hats from web designer to meal planner I'm going to waste about 30 minutes to an hour transitioning and taking off that hat and put on another hat. Whereas if I have all my content creation plans in
Yeah.
one, oh, I'm already in the content creation mode. So I can knock down that list way faster than if I'm going from content creation to meal planning to this, to that, to that. So that's my advice for the audience. That a little tip that helped me really be able to maximize my performance and efficiency.
All right, good stuff. Now let's go to this next segment right now, which is man to man. And in this segment, we just kind of talk about some things that kind of center around men, really, especially in this topic, just having a man up conversation about these certain things, especially whatever topic we have. So now, beyond your individual projects, beyond building the podcast that you built from the ground up, the podcast that you worked on, you built community around your work. That's not easy to do. It is in social media, in the social media world, but it's still not easy because people don't necessarily know how to navigate it. So what strategies have you used to foster a sense of belonging and engagement amongst your audience?
I think it goes back into what I was saying earlier about knowing who you are and knowing how to tell your story.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you know how to tell your story, that's what builds the trust. That's what builds the sense of belonging, because there are pieces of your story that other people are going through. And then
Yeah.
that's how they connect with you. Be like, man, oh, wow, Kai been with his wife since college, right? Oh, that might be a port that some men may resonate with. Oh, he also like started a podcast, stopped the podcast, and then started it back up. I'm struggling with something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's another sense of belonging. So being able to craft your story in a way that helps people see that they're not alone, that's the key thing to building community. Then the next thing of building community is always being in a position to give value. We're in an era right now, especially with the era of social media coaches and influencers.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's trying to gatekeep information, but they're positioning it like they're not, right? So we're saying like, oh, this is what you should be doing, but we don't tell people how to do it, right? And so I want to give that tip because you can still give the how to do it. Where you monetize is the execution, because you have to have faith that you're still an expert. So people are going to understand, okay, Kai's telling me I have to start a podcast this way, and he's telling me how to do it. But that sounds like a lot of work. I don't want to do it. So let me just go to Kai to do it for me. And I have that faith. Like God has confirmed that this is my assignment, as you said earlier, right? Like, so I'm not worried about holding information back, because I could still give you the plan. I'll still give you a content calendar, and people still come to me because this is my assignment. This is what I was called to do. And people,
Right.
and so I think when it comes to being building a community, we have to realize those things. What is my story? How to share it, and how can I continue to give value to the people once they have identified that I am the called person, or the community leader, or the person that resonates with that I resonate with. Give
Yeah.
value.
Yeah. I like I said, it's all about a sense of belonging. And like you said, faith comes from hearing, and we testimonies are a real thing, as people need to hear what you've been through, what you're struggling with, what you're going through, what you did, how you overcame this, so that once they see, like you said, okay, he's like me, he didn't build all this stuff up, and he has a whole family. Where some people, like, not saying if they single and can't relate, but if they are, in the same situation with Mary with a young baby, they can relate to that. Okay, this is just like me, so if he can do it, I can do it too. Whereas if they hear, like I said, those tips from a single friend, it's not going to hit the same, but it'll hit
Mhm.
different if they see it from somebody like you. young and married and happily married, because we see a lot of situations where people don't be.
Yeah.
And we saving that for the relationship stuff later down the line. Now,
Right.
here's a list of things that can be built. So obviously you can build a podcast. As a man, you can build, well, women too, build tables. You can build a network. You can build a legacy. You can build muscle. You can build a literal building. You can build a family. Here's one thing we haven't talked about: building up a person. Now, as a husband and a father, how important is it to build up someone? Now, we're going to talk about in-house first, but then, of course, with like your clients.
Yeah. And I'm going to say someone, I'm going to say the one person you should be constantly building up is yourself.
Yeah.
Because one thing as a man, I feel like the most important role as a family man or as a man, period, is moving the needle. You have to be consistently moving the needle for yourself and for your family. So that means seeking out new information, bringing in new streams of income, finding new ways to invest, finding new ways to grow and develop yourself and then the family legacy and the name, everything. Like you have to be moving the needle. So that means that you need to find a level of comfort in being uncomfortable, right? Because that means sometimes some days you're gonna have to wake up earlier than the rest of the family to get your me time, to listen to that podcast, read that book. It means that you might need to get back into the gym, work out, right? It means that you need to get uncomfortable and network with the right people. You just need to be doing something or multiple somethings to move the needle. That's the key to development, right? How can I get, and it's not even a big feat, right? Izzy, we talking about 1%. How could, like, if you ask yourself every day, when you wake up first thing in the morning, okay, what do I need to do to be 1% better than I was yesterday? In a whole year, you're 365% better than you were January 1st.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a huge, that's a lot. I don't think we can fathom how much 365% increase in anything is, right? I think if you making $100,000, a 365% increase in that, I think it's $36 million.
Yeah, okay.
Like, so we talking about huge increments. So if you focus on being 1% better than you were the day before in 365 days, you are that motherfucker. Sorry to cuss, but I just want to put it on, like drive it home. Like you that motherfucker. Like you are doing it. All you gotta do is focus on 1%. I think a lot of times we overcomplicate it. And man to man, like as men, sometimes we feel the weight of the world on our shoulders. We feel the expectations of these women, and sometimes we don't want to. We know it's not related to us, but sometimes it does still weigh, because then we start thinking like, damn, am I supposed to come right out the gate out of college at 24 years old, already providing for a woman? Like, is that what I should be doing? Like, damn, should I be having a kid this early, or should I not have a family until I'm rich and wealthy, right? Like we got all these opinions and things like that weighing on our shoulders, and it clouds our discernment. But the true thing that I can say, you should, like, if you focus on this one thing and this one thing alone, you will be all right, brother. 1% better every single day, because it forces you to get uncomfortable. It forces you to plan. It forces you to execute. It forces you to move the needle. And that's my advice from man to man.
So now let's ask this, because it's basically what the meme is about. So we just spent that whole chunk talking about building the right stuff, right? And what you need to build and how to build. And you gave us examples of several different things. This is why I was a great teacher when I was a teacher, because I hit you from a topic from every different angle, from the visual, from the oral, like every way. So you was able to hit it in all ways. Now, have you ever, and I know the answer, poured your energy or time into something that looked good? You thought, I'm on time, I'm on brand, this is the one, this makes the most sense. But you later realized God didn't tell you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And what did that moment of realization feel like?
If remember we talked about momentum and how much energy it takes to build something, I made the mistake of thinking that I was called to go into real estate coaching and consulting, because I did sales and I built this wholesale business. I'm like, oh well, I built this wholesale business, I must be called to be teaching people how to get into wholesaling. And the amount of momentum and the amount of effort I spent building up a coaching program. I've even invested dollars into a coach to help me build a coaching program, right? just for that to not be the thing and for it to just crash and burn after like 6 7 months of building it, man, it really, when I mean crash and burn, like the amount of effort and energy it took, but then also the trust that I've lost. And I'm not going to say lost, but the amount of faith that was sacrificed in
Yeah.
my life when I literally say, "Hey, this is the thing, right? Oh, I need to invest, $7,500 in this coach that's going to help me build it, and I'm going to get the money back, all right?" But
Yeah.
it didn't work out that way, and so that's $7,500 in 7 months of time that was wasted because I'm doing something that God didn't assign for me in the first place. And a lot of times we look at movement as momentum, but it's not. It's not, because you're moving when you're on the treadmill. But if you got on that treadmill thinking you actually going to get from destination A to destination B, you're mistaken. So a lot of us is just running on treadmills like hamsters, but we're
Yeah.
not actually going anywhere. And that's what I was doing when I made that mistake. I'm thinking like, oh, because this part of my career, I'm in real estate, this is where I need to be staying. Like, no, I was in this part of my career so that I could stack up money. I was making like 10K, sometimes 15K a month. The goal was not to stay in that lane. It was to build up to give myself the funds so I can invest in what I should have been doing that whole time, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
I think that's why God gave me that realization to crash and burn the way that I did, because I just wasn't seeing it. I just kept pouring more and more into this wrong thing. And he just said, yo, I gotta save you, brother. I gotta just take it all away and have you fall face first so that you can get up and see the actual thing you're supposed to be doing.
The thing with that is, and it's a great that's a great story, because again, somebody needs to hear that story so that they don't have to go through that. But we live in a world where I'm playing devil's advocate, although I agree with you, where we live in the information age. And so many people, which I've had this debate recently with a family member about, you know, you want to do all these different things. And I love that. But as a podcaster myself who's then ventured into other things, it wouldn't have made sense for me to get into vlogging at the same time while I'm trying to master podcasting. Right now, I done podcasting so long, now I can do the vlogging too. Because it's like you didn't already didn't got to here, you didn't have several seasons before your first vlog. So I was trying to explain to them, well, my homegirl, great example, who when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you see acceleration. They even said it in the Bible, right? So when you're being obedient, my homegirl, she had been trying so many different things. She finally just was herself on TikTok. Something she was trying to hide. Her TikTok grew overnight and literally is still growing. This day, she ain't even posted content. She's still getting follows, still getting engagement. I went for 1 week and my podcast was off season. I said, you know what? I'm on TikTok, I'm all these places. YouTube giving me the most go. Let me just lock in on YouTube for a week just to see if I see something. And that was me dedicating 3 shorts, 2 videos a day. After maybe day 8 of doing that, day 9, something like that, I saw one of my old videos shot up like 800-900 views overnight out of nowhere. That proved to me that I'm doing something right. I was explaining to this person, you're supposed to have different things you're into, but you have not mastered this one thing yet. Why are you trying to get into writing this book and mastering trading and mastering a vlog? You haven't been successful in one of them all the way yet. Not saying that you won't, but why are you trying to do all these things at once? And their rebuttal was, well, we're supposed to do multiple things. I said, we're supposed to do multiple things, but you have to master one thing first. And I think some people are caught up in, I can do it all at once. But if you could do it all at once, this is what we say, that personal conversation. If you could do it all at once, why hasn't it worked before?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do 40 things at once? If you've been doing that your whole life, it ain't working out. Why is magically gonna work?
Yeah, that's an easy way to burn yourself out.
And that's the main thing. So now you already said it, but you took the words out of my mouth with the next question, talking about some people confuse motion with purpose. So now we talked about moving the needle. We talked about the treadmill. What is the process now for making sure that you're actually on assignment? Because a lot of times we get caught up in our feelings. And men sometimes too, and another point back to what you're saying, men are a little too logical. Like, I love that we're logical. And with women, it balances out because sometimes too emotional and then too logical, and it balances out. And in your mind, you said this makes sense, right? The real estate thing that made sense. But to now go off of, because we can't always go off of what makes sense, because you see what they get is I got experiences too. So now, what would be your process now for making sure you're actually on trend, on brand?
Yeah. And this may sound cliche, Izzy, but I think, brothers, we need to get back into, yes, you have your logical side, but we got to tap back into our spirit. And it's because it's very confusing. You're going to get mixed emotions. You're going to get mixed signals that you're supposed to be moving in something, because it. How I'm trying to put it into words. When I talked about things have to feel uncomfortable and things are going to be hard, yes, it's a certain type of hard that we're looking for, that is the good sign, and then there's another type of hard that shows the bad sign. When you start getting a lot of spiritual pushback, when you start to um when you start to hit these drastic highs and lows, like that, those are signs that you're in something that is not aligned, because
Yeah,
alignment gives you more consistency. Though
yeah,
when we doing things, it may feel hard, but we're aligned. So along that trail, along that journey, we're going, like the father, our father is the most, he's the best leader possible. And we know that good leaders give you cues and hints of success. A good leader is going to tell you, like, hey, I'm proud of you. That was a great job you just did right there. Right. And so when our father is giving us those cues, he's putting certain things along that path or along our journey that's going to serve as those cues, like you in the right place.
right,
But
right,
when we start feeling like unfulfilled, when we start feeling empty, when we start having feelings like, man, I feel like I'm just in this alone, that's the example right there. Because God never going to leave you alone. And so if you feel alone, if you feel like he's kind of muted himself, it's because he's trying to tell you, I'm over here. You
right.
can't hear me because you over here. I'm right here. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of like the best way. And it's a very spiritual awakening that we have to have. But if you're looking for those cues that you on your assignment, that's where you got to dig into.
All right, good stuff, good stuff. Let's move to the final segment for today, which is the weekly sabbatical. And in this segment, we kind of just reminisce on some things and kind of go back in the past. So, a little bit. Now, collaborations have been pivotal in building a successful career. We know we all can't do it all alone. How do you approach building relationships that align with your vision and contribute to mutual growth, especially with other men?
How do I say, so phrase that question for me again? How do I align my vision with other men?
Yeah, and yeah, how do you approach building relationships and networking with other men, especially?
Oh man, I think that's super easy. That's one thing I feel like we have it super easy as opposed to like the women. I feel
Yeah,
like they have a lot of other things that they have to worry about and be cognizant of when they're like networking. Before, when I'm going from like man to man, I feel like it's super easy because all we have to do is just be authentic and just go off the vibes. I'm not forcing anything. I'm not forcing like that. Me as a ambivert, someone who's not necessarily fully extroverted, but also not an introvert. I don't like small talk. And so when I feel like if we have an engagement and I'm forcing small talk, that's telling me that I'm forcing something that ain't there. And so now I just need to professionally and respectfully excuse myself so that I can network with the right man or the right
yeah,
the right brother, right? And so it's just about being authentic, being respectful, because at the end of the day, as men, we just want those things. We want you to respect my time, and I want you to respect me, and I want you to be you. And so if you can do those things, then we don't, it's no beef. It's just, hey, I don't think that we should be having this conversation right now. I'm not going to say that, but I should be moving on to the next person, and I should be going off of their vibes and kind of seeing how it is. So I think we just have it super easy, and we don't got to talk every day, right? Like I laugh about this with my wife all the time because I say how we have it so easy, because like I have friends that I've known since kindergarten, is first
same,
grade and second grade,
same.
and we tight. And she'd be like, "Well, how can you say that's your best friend? You don't even talk every day." I ain't gotta talk to that man every day. I'm over here. I'm with you every day. How I have time to talk to him every day? He got his own girl, his own fiance. Like we can't talk every day. But when
Yeah,
we do talk, we like it's like we tight. But I
yeah,
feel like with women, because like they feel like I've heard her have conversations, I've heard her other best friends have conversations with each other. Be like, I just feel like we've grown apart and you haven't called to check on me and stuff like that. And I just feel like you're not as much of a friend as you were years. Like, God, we don't have that conversation. I'm not worried about you checking on me every day to know that you still my homie. Because I
yeah.
know every time we kick it, it's nothing but love. I'm gonna give you some game that's gonna help you out. You're gonna give me some game that's gonna help me out. We're gonna kick it. Like we have it. We just got it easy, bro.
Side quest conversation. So I was on Threads, minding my business as I tried to do. Not really. And I saw a conversation about friendships, and it talked about a low maintenance friend and a high maintenance friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and I'm gonna do a episode virtual panel about with different men, and we're gonna talk about friendships. It'll be coming soon. It'll be a bunch of different people. I told you when I do my panels, it's like a mix between the goal is I produce like a mix between the DNC and the Love and Hip Hop reunion. Like it's you don't know what you're gonna get. It's just gonna be a bunch of like, you know. But I say that it was talking about that, and it was talking about low maintenance friendships and how, oh, if you're a low maintenance friend, you just you don't care about people and you're just, you just say you don't have the strength to be. I'm like, y'all want look, it's not that deep. Like, and see again, I think that's just a man logic because men look like that's my friend. Like, we don't have to do all that. Like, I'm not
Was it
gonna,
women who had that opinion?
yeah,
That was saying, like, bro, I love the women in my family, and it's not a but. It's just, and I just noticed that we just wired differently. Because to me, low maintenance friend, that sounds amazing. Like I would hope to be a low maintenance friend because you have problems, you have uh issues, you have your own things you're dealing with. So why would I be the friend that's going to add anything else to that mixture, to that pot?
yeah, yeah, no, definitely. And this is my thing too. Again, kudos to you for producing over 500 episodes. Like everybody can't do that. We talk about consistency. And I've even heard from high maintenance friends that well, he ain't consistent enough. What you want me to do? Start juggling? I don't understand. Like we just want two different things because, like I said, I have friends from 3 years old and 10 and 9 and still friends to this day. And then it's these other people be like, well, you should be doing this. People create, and I'm tying it all in. People create when they never had something, even similar to the conversation I had in the rant about, you need to be a man. Well, how you know what a man be? You didn't have a father. So how you know what that looks like? We tend to create things based on our own illusions or opinions of what we think it should do. We think it should be like this. We talk about consistency. You might be engaged by this, whereas your audience might be engaged by something else. So I'm tying it all in. So how do you keep your content engaging to an audience over 500 something episodes? How do you do that?
Yeah. And it's what, like, so for clarity too, when I say 500 plus episodes, I'm also factoring in episodes that I've
Right,
produced for
right,
others, right?
right.
For the shows. And
Yeah.
it's different, but it's the same. We have to be constantly doing a temperature check of our audience. Because as we get new subscribers, as we evolve, our audience is evolving. Perfect example, right? I recently saw a thread about how Trey Songz and Omarion are still doing the same acts, and like people, as their audience is getting older, they're no longer satisfying their audience, which is a prime example that you need to be doing temperature checks of your audience. If you're getting when you started, if you still rocking with the same audience, you can't possibly think that they're the same person that they were when they started with you. So therefore, you need to identify their new interests, the new parts of their journey that they're embracing, so that you can start to create content that is related to them. Because if I like I said, I've been doing this since 2018. That's 7 years, right? Every 7 years, numerologically, we begin a new chapter of our life. So if you started with me in 2018, I can't possibly expect you the same person in 2025 or
Right.
even 2024. And so I have to now figure out, if you're still rocking with me, if you're still here in the airways, you still a subscriber, what are you working on now? What interests do you have now? What people are you hanging around? Where are you trying to be successful? Because that's now the type of content I need to be creating, not the same content that you were engaging in 2018. Because I'm not even engaging in the same content I was in 2018.
It's interesting because, like I said, I started in 2018 too, and back then I remember, I was doing, one of my segments was tips and scenarios for my college students, and so that couldn't work now. If you cater to young millennial men, the youngest millennial is 29, so they not in college, and if they are, they getting a PhD or something. So them tips, there's very a small number of people that will be doing that. So I think even with mine, I'm trying to talk about things that I know we're going through, from things I see online, from conversation I have with my young millennial male friends, or just things that I go through. So it's all about evolving. Now, I have a point. So this is called, "Is God Calling Men to Build?" And then it says yes. So this is by J.D. Parker, and they use Ezra 1 and 1 through 11. It says, "Now the first year of King Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled." It says, "God is calling men to build, but not necessarily wood and stone and iron, but to build character, life, and utility." And this can be done everywhere. "Not to public building are all men called. What sweet homes some men have. The moment that pass within the door, you feel the genuine home of welcome and blessing." The traveler says, "I must tarry here," the hungry man says. "There is bread within the walls. I know, though I do not see it." What business some men are building, marked by high policy, reputable for known morality and uprightness and straightforwardness. It says that it talks about King Solomon's temple as well, because he's one of the best builders. He was the first builder. And I think a lot of times too, when you're called to construct something, when you're called to build something from the ground up, you have to know that in some instances you might have to follow the trends to an extent. But when you're called to build something, you have to do something that's innovative. You're going to have to do something and be okay with doing something where people are going to say, "I don't know about that one." For example, I did a podcast trailer for season 9. The podcast trailer was a legit trailer, like based off of movies, like movies and TV shows, because that's how my mind is, a TV brain. So most people say, well, a podcast trailer should be 30 minutes or 30 seconds to a minute. And I agree that's a promo. But to me, when you're giving a view of what you'll see, what's upcoming this season, they need to feel something. I went on a rant, or not rant, but I went on a high search of podcast trailers, and I watched several of them, different types, high numbers, low numbers. Not one of them had me like, I want to watch this podcast. I did my podcast trailer, and so many people watched it, was like, "Is this a TV show? Is this a movie?" Like, you said some stuff like, I'm literally watching this trailer like, I want to hear that conversation. I want to hear that conversation. I want to do this. So when it comes to building something new and innovative, how do you stay innovative in a world where you could easily just kind of be like, "I'll just do this and just get to what I'm looking for"?
Yeah, it's always, again, back to what I was saying about doing the temperature checks of your audience. That's one way to do it. But then also tapping in with yourself spiritually is another way to do it. Because that's where, like, the creator, he's the creator. So he instilled creativity in us, but we got to go back to the creator to get that source. So what that looks like for me, this may be different for everybody else. It looks like putting myself out of pragmatic environments that I'm used to doing the same things. So if I'm trying to get some creative juices flowing, I'm most likely not going to do this in my office. I'm most likely not going to do that, in the studio. I'm most likely going to go on a hike, go in some nature, go get an Airbnb that I've never stayed at before, do a staycation or a vacation. And that's where the creator is meeting me with all my creative ideas off of the data I've collected about where I'm trying to go, where I'm headed, and who I'm trying to get there with. And so that's what we just need to do, is figure out ways to tap in with the creator if we're looking for ways to be creative, because that's all innovation is creativity with work, right? You can be creative, but you're innovative when you use your creativity and you actually create something.
Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. Final question for the day. Looking ahead, what legacy are you aiming to build through your work, and what steps are you taking out to ensure that your vision comes to fruition?
Man, the legacy is always making sure that my son and his children have the life that they're looking to live. And so just doing things like being more financially responsible, building brands, building businesses that pay not just me, but my legacy for lifetimes to come. Talking about big box brands like we see all the time, without shouting these names, we know who they are. And so that's what I'm aiming for myself and for my legacy. And, that looks like building trust, investing in the real estate, getting into the stock market, creating passive streams of income that pay us for generations. This is the goal. These are some of the goals that we have, and the way that we're doing it is by continuously. This is why I love the podcast that I started for myself, is because I have like an opportunity to literally identify, based on where I'm trying to go, identify the people that can help me get there, and I just have a pleasure sitting down with them for 45 minutes to an hour and a half, grilling them on ways that I could kind of implement these things. And so, and because I'm getting this information for free, why would I hold on to that? And so that's also what inspires me to keep going with my podcast, because if I'm going to get this information, I know there are other people who can use this information as well. And so it will be a disservice to me, because if I want this to continue, God did not bring me on this world to be selfish. I need to also give that information as well. And the podcast is what enables me to do that.
I said that was the last question, but real last question. 3 people you'd like to have on your podcast.
Man, 3 people I love to have on my podcast. I would definitely say Alex and Leah Hermosi, because they're married and they have built an amazing business and brand together. And so as a married man, I would love to have them on. I would also love to have Grant Cardone, as the real estate mogul that he is. And then lastly, I would say I would love to have, I'm gonna say Burna Boy as an artist, because I don't really get a chance to have artists on my show too much. But his mom is his manager, and so I would like to talk about that dynamic, because we hear a lot of things like, those are 3 examples. Actually, all 3 of them do business with their family. And a lot of times we get pushed the misinformation that it's bad to do business with family. No, it's not. No, it's not. They're the first people that I'm looking to start business with, because the business is for them anyway. So why not get them involved in the business, especially my spouse? So having those people, I think, will be great, because it gives me more insight on how to motivate family members into getting in the business.
All right. Now I think about the game, and I always think about Tasha Mack and Malik from the game.
Yeah.
And they had a good. I didn't watch the newer seasons, but throughout the lifeline of the show, they stayed pretty tight. They would have little arguments, but that was normal. So, all right, ending up with the question of challenge for the week. So I'm asking y'all, what are you called to build in this season? What are you called to build in this season? This is going to really require you to, like he said, tap in with the creator and really ask God and really sit and say, what am I supposed to be doing? Because I think that's a healthy question to really ask yourself, to sit and say, what am I supposed to be doing right now? As a man, what am I supposed to be doing? Like, where am I supposed to be? Like, I'm all over the place. And I think that's a good question to ask yourself and to really definitely tap into. This has been a great episode. Anything else you want to add, say to the people before we go today?
Man, no, just remember that your story is more important than you think, right? A lot of people say like, oh, my story, I haven't, I wasn't homeless. I didn't sleep in my car to be successful. I'm not successful yet. Like, you don't have to be successful. Every part of your story, from your journey, from how you was raised to what you're doing now, to the failures, the obstacles, everything is important and resonates with somebody. And if it deeply resonates with somebody, they want it to resonate with the people who they love dearly too. And so you have a story, share that story. But if you need some help on how to craft that story, tap in with me on all platforms. That's Quiy.speaks. And I'm putting out content all the time on how to craft your story. But also, if you want to just tap in for a consultation and us to do like a audit on your YouTube channels, audit on your social channels, or just an audit on life, period, to see what you have in the tank and how you can brew it all together. I'd love to help out. So tap in with me, and me and my team would love to help you build.
All right, good stuff. Thank y'all for tuning in today. PSA signing out. Always remember, keep your head up like your neck hurt. Remember who you are. Make it mine, or don't let it make you. And remember, as always, I love us for real.